So
Oh, there we go.
Thank you. All right, we'll start again. Welcome to this Citrus seminar and webinar. And Jacqui, I might just ask you to just start presenting from you in case anything else goes wrong on my side.
All right. Okay, let's see if I can. It's going. Sorry, I'm still getting used to Zoom. There we go. Righto. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
And sorry, Jacqui, what I forgot to say is that although there's not too many of us here, we'll probably, if you just want to put questions into your chat, we'll certainly have a Q&A session at the end of the two presentations. So thanks, Jacqui. Go ahead.
Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming. My name's Jacqui Mitchell. I'm the Urban Biosecurity Coordinator at Citrus Australia, and I'm joined here by my colleague Ben Burchett, who works for the Northern Territory Government. Our powers combined, we form CitrusWatch, along with a couple of other colleagues. And we're going to be talking about urban biosecurity for backyard citrus in this webinar today. Click the right button. There we go. So a little bit about myself. I've been working in the horticulture industry for about 10 years now. I've actually come across from a previous career in mining and mineral science. Bit of a leap, but hey, I'm loving it. I've been living and gardening in 3 different states, 1 territory, and 4 very different climates and soil types. Shout out to Perth's Bassendean Sands for getting me started. So I've worn many hats in my journey into horticulture, and that includes sales, training, retail nursery, and now biosecurity. My first major introduction into the world of biosecurity was the citrus canker outbreak in Darwin that happened in 2018. I thought that I was fairly well versed in general sort of pest and disease maintenance, nursery biosecurity, and all of those sorts of things. I had my pest guide reporter on my phone and sent in snapshots every so often of random things that I found on plants. Nothing like that prepared me for the world of an incursion when that occurred, and it really opened my eyes to all the things that go on in the background that we don't necessarily hear about working in sort of that customer-facing aspect. So CitrusWatch is a collaborative national program. We are made up of Port Innovation, Plant Health Australia, Citrus Australia, Northern Territory Government, and CSIR Australia. What our project is all about is preventative biosecurity, which includes things like surveillance, engagement within industry, but also very much in the urban space. So it's home gardeners in retail horticulture, as well as your citrus orchards and production areas. So a couple of fun facts here, and just to give a little bit of context of why biosecurity is so important. It forms a major part of production losses and costs to our production economy and the global economy as it is. Very, very big chunk of your production costs when producing fruit for the market. We've got some pictures here of our main big bad that our program CitrusWatch is surveilling for, and that's the Asian citrus psyllid. First up, now this psyllid is a vector. Not only is it a particularly unpleasant sap-sucking insect that are particular to citrus and their relatives, They also are a vector for a disease called Huánglóngbìng. Now, you may have heard that word thrown around recently, or it may have been, you may have heard it as citrus greening disease. It's a disease that is currently causing a lot of drama in many other countries in the world and their citrus industries. There's citrus canker as well. That's one that we've had a couple of incursions for in Australia. It is on our doorstep, but we have been able to successfully contain them when they have occurred. Big thanks to our various biosecurity organisations and bodies for all the work that they did to contain that one and eliminate it. We've also got the glassy-winged sharpshooter there, bit of a tongue twister, that one. And that one is also a vector for the Xylella disease. So I'm going to flick through these ones fairly quickly. A lot of this information you can find on our website, and there is a lot of resources there. The links will be on the last slide as well. And happy to send that information through for dissemination as well. So just a nice picture here of just all the different things to look for with Huánglóngbìng. And as you can probably tell, some of these can be quite easily mistaken for other issues within citrus, but the primary one is that very particular greening that you can see in the top right-hand corner there. That patterning is quite distinct from your usual sort of nutrient deficiency and mosaic virus type patterning, and also the deformation that you'll see on the inside of the fruit. So this is a disease that affects the entire tree, and there is no cure, and there are very limited chemical controls. At the moment, the primary control is exclusion netting, which, as you can imagine, for something as large as a citrus orchard, would be a very, very expensive outlay, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. Coming here. Oop, took too many slides. So a bit more context. So the Asian citrus psyllid is the main vector, but there is also other psyllids that are known to be able to carry HLB, and that's the African citrus psyllid. Research is being conducted as to whether or not any of the Australian native psyllids can act as vectors as well. Main issue being that, you know, because it's not here, we don't want to bring it here to do the research, so we've got to send our research overseas to be done. Likewise with things like rootstocks and resistant research into resistance for native citrus. That top half of that map shows you the global distribution of HLB. As you can see, it's quite widespread. Australia over there is quite happily free of it. And then the bottom half of that map is the spread of the Asian citrus psyllid as well. So it's well traveled, and yeah, we are one of the last places to be free of it, and we want to keep it that way. A little bit of info about the incursion of, or the introduction of ACP and HLB into the American citrus industry. It was first detected in Florida in 1998, and as you can see there, it wasn't found on citrus. It was actually found on a mock orange, otherwise known as a Morea paniculata, orange jasmine, orange jessamine. It's a plant of many names, very, very popular landscaping plant, as I'm sure you're all aware. It was then also found in Texas, imported on yet another Morea. And then in 2005, they detected their first case of the actual disease, HLB, on a backyard tree, which is a pomelo. So you can see that we have a very high chance of detecting an exotic pest on a backyard plant before we do industry. And so the benefit of being able to detect it in an urban setting is that the chances of containing it there are much higher compared to the cost to production if we were to only find it by the time it gets to an actual commercial orchard. So within 3 years of detection, it had spread to most of the growing regions within Florida. So that is some very scary statistics for us in the industry. But we don't want people to panic. But it just gives you an idea of why this is such an important pest and why we're focusing on this one above other pests and diseases. So with urban biosecurity, what do we actually mean by urban biosecurity? Entry pathways into the country, being an island nation, come from many different sources besides just water crossing. Some things can be carried across by wind, so extreme weather events like our cyclonic north can blow things across the strait over from Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. It can also be carried by wildlife, by ocean currents and things like that across the islands. But in an urban context, it's worldwide travel. So things like people going on holidays overseas, people bringing in plants through the airports, or bits of twigs stuck on their clothes or on their luggage. People doing the wrong thing, trying to bring things in when they know that they're not supposed to. That can be through plane travel, but also on cruise ships and other ways of getting in. So how an urban environment differs in terms of biosecurity from an industrial industry sort of context. When you've got urban areas, you've got 1,000 houses and backyards, where in a production setting you've only got citrus trees. So you may have 2,000 citrus trees on a block, which is managed by a single farm manager. And so they're the only person that needs to sort of, I guess, be aware and have the knowledge to maintain their property for pests and diseases. Whereas in an urban setting, that same area, you might have 500 trees, 1,000 houses, and 1,000 different stakeholders. And not every single person that owns a citrus tree is not necessarily going to know everything there is to know about maintaining that tree, what things that they need to do to maintain their own personal biosecurity for not only their tree, but also their neighbours' trees. Everyone's got different levels of investment in that tree. And one of the things that sort of came across in the Florida situation was the emotional value of an individual citrus tree in a backyard. So people will often be quite connected to a tree in their backyard in some way. It might have value in the sense that it's providing food, it's providing shade. It was planted, it was a gift from someone very precious to them, or it was planted by someone that was very emotionally connected. And so the idea that in the event of an incursion of an exotic pest, that tree may be required to be removed. So when you've got a detection, you run into issues of things like people don't want to notify because they're afraid that tree is going to get removed, or they're afraid that if they know that the tree is sick, then it's going to die, and they don't want to deal with that emotionally, and so you have that emotional barrier to get across as well. And when you have that diversity, you can have 99% of the stakeholders buy in but we all know anyone that's ever had to deal with their neighbour's fruit fly ridden plum tree or something similar. You know, it only takes one tree to be the host, and if people aren't dealing with that, it can create more issues and spread further down the track. So by engaging with people, we hope that we sort of can break down those barriers and make it easier for everyone. So through CitrusWatch, we're doing this from two different angles. We've created our EDN network, which is the early detector network, to conduct surveillance, so active surveillance with sticky traps, but also just an educational viewpoint. So that's how us engaging with you here at Hort Media, but also just all our community and education that we do through this program. So the early detector network is our primary, I guess, surveillance method that we're doing in the urban space. We've broken up into two separate regions. So I look after the southern region, which is everything, I guess, south of the Tropical Capricorn, and my colleague Ben looks after the northern region. So we share WA and Queensland. Ben does look after all of the Northern Territory. One of the other things we also do here is targeted surveys, which Ben will talk a bit more about in his section. So to give you an idea, where are we actually targeting? So we target major ports of entry. We do have some traps across regional areas. We don't have a lot. So I issue about 400 traps across my region, and that covers urban and production areas. So in the urban space, I probably issue about 250 to 300 traps, and we aim to get at least 200 to 300 of those back as we order with engaging with sort of volunteers and the general public. Life happens, and so we always we work on that some of those won't get deployed, or they won't come back necessarily. People forget, or as one person had theirs stolen at some point. I'm not sure why anyone would steal a sticky trap, but it happened. I think they stole some blueberry trees as well. So this is just a bit of an indication of where our coverage is. I'd try to target the major cities. We do have very low numbers in South Australia at the moment. So anyone that's based in Adelaide, bit of a shout out to you guys. We are looking for more volunteers in that space. All states are welcome though. We have good numbers in every other region, but we always welcome new volunteers. The more the merrier. Okay, so how does it work? So volunteers will opt in through our registration form on our website. We trap twice a year in autumn and in spring. So I'm about to deploy my April or my autumn trapping. There is still time to register though. I'll be sending them out in the next 2 weeks for anyone that's interested. These trap kits consist of a sticky trap, a cage, and a lure. This lure smells very distinctly like citrus, no surprise there. And that trap gets hung out for 2 weeks. Volunteers will submit a report to my pest guide reporter, and that gives us all the location data as well as pictures, and just a fallback if we lose track of any of the code barcodes for the individual sticky traps as well. Just gives us some extra tracing. This also gives us an opportunity to engage with our volunteers about using my pest guide reporter. I'm sure many of you are already aware of it and the many advantages that it has for us. So it's a good opportunity to sort of engage people with that reporting for biosecurity as well. Those traps then get sent to our nominated entomologist, depending on where they are located. In WA, I send them, get them sent through to DPERD's laboratories. We have a couple of entomologists that we send them to in the other states, and I believe Ben's ones go to the NTG labs as well. We then collate all this data and it gets uploaded to AusPestCheck, which Ben will talk a bit more about later. Let me get on to engagement. So this is where I guess the fun stuff happens. So we go to events. So I'll be down at Miscus in a couple of weeks' time. So feel free to come over and say hello. I try and work with local groups as much as I can, because I'm a one-person team in my office or in my region, so to speak. So where I can partner with the state authorities, I try to. So you can see a few pictures here of some of the work that I've done with Agriculture Victoria, Biosecurity Queensland, and DPERD WA. I try to find events that have, I guess, the biggest number of, I guess, home gardeners and the widest diversity as well, because talking to home gardeners, you know, you've got your experienced gardeners who sort of they don't take much convincing when it comes to, hey, here's a new pest, please keep an eye out for it. When you tell them sort of what sort of things to look for, you know, discoloration in the leaf, deformation in the fruit, and discoloring and things like that, they usually have a fair idea and fair understanding. One of the greater ones that I get from these events are the people that are sort of just starting to get into gardening, or they confess that they are black thumbs, or they don't have the confidence yet. And so being able to talk to them face to face as well, I can sort of run them through a bit of just general citrus health and a bit of gardening advice here and there as well. Quite often people will look at the photos and go, oh my God, I've got this on my tree. This is exactly what it looks like. And then I'll get them to show me photos. And, you know, it's like, oh, no, you've got some serious mites. And so it's sort of a bit of a reassurance as well for them that, yes, we want you to look out for these sorts of things, but we want you to also have the knowledge to be confident in caring for your tree, so that you can also just in general have a very healthy citrus tree as well, and a healthy garden in general. It also acts to demystify that biosecurity process as well. In certain areas, there's sometimes a lack of trust or a lack of confidence in the process. We live in a world of too much information sometimes, and so trying to cut through some of that misinformation can be quite challenging. So how can you guys help us being in the haunt media space? So we produce a lot of resources. We're constantly expanding on that. We'd love for you to spread the word. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be a primary feature, but just a mention, letting people know that we are here and we exist, and that these are things to be aware of, but not necessarily needing to be sort of a blinkered sort of view. It's a holistic, you know, these are all the things to do, or jobs in the garden, but also, you know, if you spot something a little bit strange or just you're not sure about it, err on the side of caution, and just send that report through to my pest guide or the exotic pest hotline. And last slide for me, but here's a bit of an events pipeline coming up for 2025. I've got Werribee Orchard, well, actually Werribee's just happened. Miscus is coming up. I'll be at the SA Autumn Garden Festival, Perth Garden Festival, Queensland Garden Show, and the Werribee Orchard Festival in August. Very much open to suggestions or invitations for more events. And well, I've probably talked for a bit too long, but I'll hand over to Ben. And oh, sorry, and there's all our links. I'll pop that up. I'll send that one through. I'll send that one through to Jen, actually. But here's a bunch of our links that you can find us online. Righto, so over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Jacqui.
Sharing my screen.
I'll just share my screen. Is that sharing?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, everyone see that and hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Okay, yeah, my name's Ben Burchett. I'm based with the Northern Territory Government here in Darwin. I don't have anywhere near the experience in horticulture that my colleague Jacqui does, but I guess the experience I do have is biosecurity. So I've worked with the CitrusWatch program for nearly 3 years out of the 5-year program. We're just about to come into our 5th year in the middle of this year. But my experience is I've spent about 20 years with the federal government, with the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, with biosecurity. So I've seen firsthand stuff come through the airport, citrus products and whatnot. I've seen firsthand people doing the wrong thing, not declaring. You know, you'll quite often get partial declarants come in. So, you know, they'll come through with 2 bags and here's my barley mask, but in the other bag there could be citrus or other contraband. So as Jacqui illuminated too, I look after Northern Australia. So my remit is 400 sticky traps a year. Again, I do that in two trapping seasons. We don't really have the typical spring and autumn up here. So I really focus on the early dry season and the late dry season. So April and September. And of course, and I also do targeted surveillance for key pests and diseases. So you can see there that map basically illustrates all the areas that I'm trapping. You can see the first points of entry being Townsville, Cairns, Darwin, and to a lesser extent Wyndham, but also some of our commercial production areas such as Katherine, Tea Tree, Kununurra, the Atherton Tablelands, and around Emerald south of Townsville. Little bit of stats there on last year's trapping data. So you can basically see that we have to put out a lot more traps to get the 200 return. I guess those figures illustrate that I'm going above and beyond. But yeah, we get about a return rate of around sort of 80%. That sort of fluctuates between 77 and 82. And so far to date, we've had 0 target pests detected, so 0 exotics. So that's really good news. We talk about the target pests, and as Jacqui talked about earlier, the Asian citrus psyllid is probably the one that we're most concerned about. It's present in Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and Timor-Leste. We do know it's a vector for the Huánglóngbìng or citrus greening. They are very, very small, but they're likely to congregate in large numbers, as that lower left image illustrates. Again, its cousin, the African citrus psyllid, is also a nasty sapsucker, also capable of carrying vector for citrus greening. It's thought that the climatic areas of Northern Australia aren't really suited to it, but we're still focusing on early detection of that pest as well. And again, the glassy wing sharpshooter is a vector for Xylella or Pierce's disease. So again, neither present in Australia. Xylella has no cure, nor does Huánglóngbìng. So it's really important to keep those diseases out, or they'll devastate our citrus industry in Australia. It's worth 900 million annually and it's growing. So certainly we want to protect the livelihoods of our farmers, as well as obviously our favourite citrus tree in our backyard. Jacqui touched on the impact that Huánglóngbìng had in the States. So the impact in Florida, 2005, 2006, Florida were producing around 174 million boxes of citrus. By 2021, that was reduced to 57 million. So a survey of 76 growers in 2016 asked growers to estimate the average percentage of loss, and the average response is around 41%. So it's quite significant. That's enough to make farmers sort of walk off the land or bulldoze everything and try and grow something different. So it's really important that we've got an early detection system in place so that if this thing does show up on our shores, we've got the capability to basically combat it, stop it in its tracks and prevent the spread. Along with the surveillance activities, the sticky trapping, I also do engagement activities. So, you know, that's school visits. I do the show circuit. I visit commercial growers and nurseries. I get out to research stations and community gardens. And I also liaise with other like agencies like QDAF, DPIRD and Federal DAF. Maintaining interest in the early detector network is a bit of a challenge. Look, some people are really interested and they'll come back year after year, season after season, continue trapping. Others try it out once and it's, you know, they sort of, oh yeah, that was great, but I won't do it again. And others sort of receive a kit and just lose interest altogether. So I like to try and maintain interest by, you know, sending out newsletters, just with some fun facts, some stats and some interesting articles. Again, photo competitions are always good in maintaining interest, and we sort of reward people by sending through their photos. So Jacqui mentioned targeted surveys. So Jacqui's predominantly looking at urban sort of landscapes. I focus on not only urban, but also commercial production areas. So my remit is to try and do 4 to 5 regions a year. We do visual assessments and tap sampling, which involves a visual inspection of the tree, coupled with tapping of the branches to see what falls out. I also collect bud sticks, and that's collected from 20% of the trees and tested for Xylella and the HLB disease as well. Just a little bit of information about some of the areas where I've been doing targeted surveillance of commercial orchards. So you can see there, you know, I've been up to Dimbula. I'm looking in our own backyard here in the Territory, Central Australia. I also get over to Kununurra, which I'm due over there the week after next to do some survey work. And then I'll be heading over to the East Coast. And then later in the year, I'll be heading up to Cape York. Again, community gardens are a really good way to get people involved. So again, not just around the Territory, but I get over into Alice Springs and over on the East Coast. And that's just, I mean, that's just the last 6 months. So it's certainly not all of the community gardens that I've visited. It's a bit of a snapshot of the last 6 months. And again, the last 6 months, I've been getting into research stations. It's quite interesting that you go to a research station and all of a sudden they've got, you know, an orchard there that they're doing trials on for various things. So I've been targeting those as well. There's a little research station up here at the Coastal Plains Research Station, which has got a nice crop of finger limes. So I hadn't seen finger limes before, sort of on that scale. That's quite interesting to see. And Walkerman Research Station up on the Tablelands also has a crop of citrus that they're trialling for basically chemical-free orchard, organic. So the bud stick sampling basically involves taking 4 bud sticks with 10 centimetres long from the 4 quadrants of the tree. That makes up one sample. They get sent for analysis for Xylella and HLB, basically through DNA extraction. So you can see there, basically I have to take a number of bud stick samples every time I do a targeted survey. Any orchards that are over 50 trees, I've got to do 20% of that 50. And anything under 50, I do, I pick basically the worst of the lot and take 2 or 3. We also conduct bud stick blitzes, which is basically going out and getting random bud stick samples from all over the community, all over Australia, which basically, again, gives us a certain degree that a little bit of proof of freedom of these pests and diseases in Australia. And of course, that supports market access. So our growers can send their delicious fruit overseas to overseas markets. So the bud stick sampling, so these diseases can remain unsymptomatic. So the tree may have it, you wouldn't know it. Okay, so that's why we take these bud sticks to make sure that by doing the molecular testing enables DNA to be extracted through qPCR testing, which is essentially quantitative polymerase chain reaction testing in a lab. Technique of molecular biology enables levels of gene expression to be detected. Now, I'm not a molecular biologist. I'm an environmental biologist, so I don't have a lot of information on exactly what goes into that procedure in the lab, other than what I've basically stated here. So it's essentially the analysis of DNA for the presence or absence of those 2 nasty diseases. Where does the data go? Well, as Jacqui said, it goes to Plant Health Australia's Pest Check database, which is a central repository for most national surveillance data across Australia. You can see there a bit of a schematic of all my data entry to date. Again, you can see the heavy focus is around the main first points of entry and the capital cities, and also where those production grower regions are. We have our own data standard specifications for CitrusWatch program as well. So quite tailored for this program. This is a bit about future surveillance activities. So I've already done Neutrano. I'm heading over to Kununurra next. And then I'll be heading over east, as I said. And I'll be doing a couple of surveys in the greater Darwin region as well as Alice Springs. And notwithstanding that, I'm also doing the urban and peri-urban landscapes as well. So again, like I said before, mainly involving community gardens, urban landscapes, nurseries, botanic gardens and so forth. Interagency collaboration is huge. So although I am Citrus Australia, I do work for NTG, but I'm not an NT. I am an NTG employee, but I wouldn't be if I wasn't with CitrusWatch. So I've got biosecurity officers in various regions of the NT doing trapping for me, as well as doing surveys for me. So they're being a big help, boosting the numbers. I've been liaising with DPIRD up in the northwest WA, and they're also helping me out with setting out sticky traps right through the east and west Kimberley, which is obviously a really remote area, costly to get around. So I'm really grateful for them. Queensland Government have also been a real big help, just pointing me in the right direction. So I've been sort of working with places like Walkerman Research Station and the Mareeba office, and liaising with colleagues up in the Torres Strait and Yeppoon. And they're on board as well. So I've got quite a number of my EDN are actually members of state and federal government, which is really good to see. And just some of the acknowledgements there. So it just goes to show, and this is, no way all of them. There's a whole lot of community councils and community groups and stuff that I'd like to acknowledge as well. but these are the big ones that basically assist us. So DPI New South Wales, they're responsible for all that molecular testing that we do. Charles Darwin University, where I first met Jacqui, presenting out there, so they're on board. And obviously our sponsors or our partners, Plant Health Australia and Citrus Australia as well. So that's the north.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I'm wondering if anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask questions of Ben or Jacqui about the information you've just heard, or what else we can do as media people or nursery people, in the case of, I know Lisa's on board there, to help spread this word. I noticed, just while someone's thinking of their question and unmuting themselves, Jacqui, I noticed that you don't do any surveillance down here in Tasmania.
And I do get that one a fair bit. So the reason for that is that there isn't much, if any, citrus industry in Tasmania.
Right.
So as much as I'd love to be able to do surveillance there, it's kind of a numbers game for us. I think Ben might be able to confirm this one, but I think we consider Tasmania to probably not be an ideal climate for the ACP. They are more of a subtropical insect, and so at this stage, Tasmania is considered very lower risk in that respect.
I noticed that there wasn't any in northern New South Wales on the coast, the coast side of it. Sorry, just to check.
I have to double check my map.
Yeah, actually, and I thought I should get on to Phil Dudman, because he's very active in the community and on radio, ABC radio, and he's a great citrus man. He should. It's a shame he hasn't been here today. Yes. He must have been working, but he'd be an ideal person to be contacting in this region.
And I can pass on those details for you, Jacqui. I thought the same thing, Kim, and I know that, of course, he's at Lismore, and they've sort of been suffering a lot from the rain.
Yeah,
yes. He's probably a bit distracted at the moment.
Just a bit.
Probably, yeah.
Yes,
I was curious.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I was just curious because there was a lot of talk about the concern of the vectors and, if they come into the country. But was there risk with other sources of bringing in the disease, like fruit coming from overseas as well? Or if someone has a tree, can it like pass from one tree to another without the vector, say in the soil or the pot or something like that?
Ben, you might know a bit more about that than me. That I believe it is passed on through the vector. The presence in the tree. So what HLB does is it shortens the lifespan of a tree. So you go from being a 50 to 60 year productive lifespan for typical citrus down to about 7 years. So I don't believe it maintains a presence in the soil. So you'd have to have an infected tree plus the psyllid to pass it on.
Okay.
Then, Ben, do you know if there's transmission through grafts?
I'd say there probably would be if it's present in the bud sticks, then most certainly.
If even like you prune a tree and then you haven't cleaned your secateurs and you move to another tree, is there sort of potential then for spreading?
I personally wouldn't risk it. I'd always keep your tools clean, but again, I can't put my hand on my heart and say that. It's like soil coming in. We have zero tolerance for soil coming in. I can't put my hand on my heart and say that soil's got all these diseases in it. But to enable that decision, I'd have to go and get it tested for everything. So that's why we just say, hey, we don't have any appetite for it at all.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, Kate.
Sorry, I'm doing flood cleanup at the same time. So my question is that you're doing an amazing job keeping it out, and hats off to biosecurity for everything they do. But are you putting in some sort of plan for when it does get here? And the reason I ask that is that we've been smashed by the papaya mealybug that has been a problem around the world for 20 years and has only just arrived here. So I'm just curious, do we see that we're doing an amazing job keeping it out? We hope it stays that way, but are we also looking at contingency plans for when it does arrive?
Absolutely. So part of, I guess, the goals of CitrusWatch is obviously prevention is the best cure. However, it is an inevitability. It will get here eventually. So while we're trying to buy as much time as possible, we have a lot of research and development going on in the background. We have partnerships with universities around the world where ACP and HLB are present, because obviously we don't want to bring it here to do the research on it. So we're doing things like sending our native citrus overseas to do research on their susceptibility. There is some research going into whether or not they can actually form suitable resistant rootstocks to help the overseas industry recover from their HLB. So all of this is going on in the background. They're also researching things like, chemical controls, biological controls, and these things all take time and money. So the longer we can hold off an incursion into Australia and having it established here, the better prepared we can be when that does eventually happen.
Lisa, did you want to ask a question before?
Thanks, Jacqui. I did have a quick question with regards to the pheromones in the trap. Are they specific to the Asian citrus psyllid and the African citrus psyllid, or do they attract other psyllids, other insects as well?
Well, I've got one right here in front of me. It looks like a little bicky, and on the back of it, it says Diocet Asian citrus psyllid. So, look, I just had a question yesterday. Why aren't we using African citrus psyllid pheromones, which I couldn't answer, only to say that it wasn't really such a big issue for the tropical climate. The short answer to that is no, I don't know, Lisa. I know that this, to my knowledge, is specifically designed for the ACP. And so they're the ones that we've been using throughout the program. Incidentally, everyone, this is what a sticky trap looks like. This is a fake lemon tree. But this is just some of the engagement stuff that we do. Is, I use this as a prop on a lot of sort of engagement activities that I do. But yeah, it's got a little barcode there that's scanned by the My Pest Guide Reporter app, and we get access to the back end of that to do the number crunching. But not sure on that one. I'm not sure if it attracts. I mean, we get all sorts of bycatch, if you put it that way, whether they're just accidentally getting stuck or whether they're actually attracted to the sticky pad or the lure or both, is a good question.
Thanks for that, Lisa. It looks like you threw him a curl ball there. So maybe we need to know a bit more about that just in the future. It might be something that you can find out a bit more information, and we can then pass it on to the HMAA. But are there any other questions? Because otherwise, I think we can probably say thank you very much.
Indeed.
I'll just say one thing,
Yes,
Jacqui, when you said that you had events that you attended and you were open to others, I didn't notice anything for Sydney on your list. And I just thought that the Sydney Collectors Fair is probably the one to try for as the biggest event in Sydney.
Thank you very much. I have been looking for an event in Sydney and wasn't sure whether or not the Collectors Fair would be as, I guess, edibles oriented. So that's great feedback because it is one that I am looking at.
I'd say
It was very niche, but it's become bigger and bigger. So I think, unless Jennifer, you think otherwise, but I think it's probably the best bet for Sydney.
I think given that Sydney has a bad track record of actually having garden shows that last, and the collectors one has grown and grown and grown, it really does attract such a wide range of gardeners now, and probably people that are proactive and they're the sort of ones that you'd be looking for, I would think, Jacqui. So it might be worth coming across. It's going to be held in Penrith this year, which is a new area, which may mean too that it attracts more an even wider range of gardeners to it. So yeah, with the lack of other things other than, I guess, the Royal Easter Show, it's probably one of the best bets.
Fantastic. Yeah, so to give you a little bit of background, I joined CitrusWatch about a year and a bit ago. So I've been slowly building up my network. So Perth was kind of my first target just because that's where I'm originally from. So I already had a bit of a network with the hort industry there. And being based in Victoria, again, that's sort of where a lot of my network is. And so I'm sort of venturing out into South Australia. I've yet to find a garden festival that's actually in Adelaide. So I've booked in for the Autumn Garden Festival in Clare. But yes, thank you for that suggestion, because yeah, Sydney was a bit of a black hole for garden festivals that I could find.
It is the in Perth, sorry, in Adelaide, that the agricultural show at the end of August, early September has a very big gardening and horticultural component to it, and Sophie Thompson always has a display there, and she's a very popular figure, so that the Adelaide show is worth investigating as well.
So we do have, as part of our citrus industry events, we have this thing called the Australian Citrus Congress, where we're actually going into that in Griffith next week. But Adelaide is actually where we're going to be holding in next year's one. So watch this space.
It sounds great.
Hoping to do a bit of urban engagement while I'm there for the industry events.
Great, that's great. Well, I'm really pleased to have heard from both of you, and I'm sure everyone here would like to say thank you for that. And as we've recorded this, we'll be able to put it up on the website and urge everybody to have a look at it, because I do think the horticultural media needs to be aware that these diseases and vectors are around, are being watched for and could be around, and that we have so many citrus that need an eye kept on them. So thank you very, very much. And you can stop recording it now, Jacqui, and we'll try and get it.
Thanks.